Hey everybody, this is Dude, and this is the Bourbon Boys Advent Tasting Podcast. We pulled together some of our favorite picks to share with you as we count down to Christmas. We hope you get a chance to taste some of these great bourbon brands this holiday season with friends and family. Until then, bourbon on.
Yeah, talk about, we'll have Buffalo Trace next, which, Kurt, to your point earlier about the labels being the same place. Yeah, they're all manufactured or produced out of a Buffalo Trace now. It's interesting, and I'll get to it in just a minute, but just to add on some of the Blanton story there. But one of the things that the Buffalo Trace claims is, hey, we've been doing it the same way for a couple hundred years. And the story of Buffalo Trace as a distillery goes back to the early 1800s when there was a warehouse built by the Kentucky River for shipping purposes. So they acquired goods there, sometimes bourbon for transport on the river. Legend has it that there was some distilling going on there as well. But it's confirmed that in 1858, there was a distillery that was built there. So we know since at least 1858 there's been distilling going on there. Continuously since then, a lot of growth, a lot of changes in ownership, interesting stories along the way. There was a distillery built, and then in 1882, lightning strike, big fire, whole place burned. Wow. Thank God they came back with resilience and built an even bigger distillery. So it kept it going. The interesting thing, and they talked about this, we did have the chance to visit the Buffalo Trace Distillery when we went on the Bourbon Trail, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. Yep. When Prohibition came into be, a few distilleries, if you remember, were granted rights to provide medicinal
I remember that.
whiskey.
Yes.
They were one of the few that got to provide medicinal.
That's right.
Not only were they allowed to provide and bottle and provide medicinal whiskey, they were also allowed to produce new whiskey. So to keep the supply chain going. So
it was a pretty generous prescription.
Yes. Oh, yeah. They were
without any age restrictions or malady associations. Like, you know,
kind of like marijuana today.
I've got a hangnail and I'm 6 years old.
Oh, you need some.
We got a bourbon for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So cool part of the story. Yeah, I don't know. They don't really talk about if there were bribes involved or if it was just luck of the draw. Why that was, but so Prohibition hits. Almost everybody shut down. They get to keep going. In 1933, when Prohibition was lifted, they were one of only like 4 distilleries in Kentucky that were currently ready to make whiskey in production. So
no like 6-year wait.
There was no ramp up,
no 12,
no stills or anything.
Yep.
So they were ready to roll. So they've been in continuous production. So long history, really cool story, beautiful facility. There to tour and visit. But the interesting thing about Buffalo Trace, as David mentioned earlier, it's part of the Sazerac family now. It changed hands a few times before that. But it really wasn't until 1999 that it was renamed as the Buffalo Trace Distillery, and they launched their flagship brand.
Yeah.
So you talk about hundreds of years of production, doing it the same way.
Yeah.
But they really only brought this label out in 1999.
Which is really interesting when you look at Taylor and you look at Pappy and you look at Blanton's. I mean, there's, at least it feels like probably more historical kind of legacy brands within their portfolio.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of them are named after the people there. You talked about Blanton's. There was Colonel Taylor, part of their history. George Stagg was a part of their history and all that. So the labels that they bring forward in other areas are tied to that. But, Buffalo Trace was just introduced. Now, the idea, and I did not know this till we started prepping for the show, but Buffalo Trace actually refers to like a path, a literal path that was carved out by the migration of the buffaloes.
Okay.
So, which ultimately became like a trade route or whatever. But that is that's
interesting.
where the name originated was with that.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Like I said, very cool facility. I think we actually had lunch there.
The barbecue joint there is fantastic.
Let's be clear, we did not have lunch there.
75% of us did.
Yeah, Kurt did not. David, Derek, and Alton had a wonderful
great.
lunch.
I think that, and we stopped there after we did Woodford.
Yes, we did.
We did.
Right, so we saw like the traditional limestone wall, wood interior. We didn't go into the actual storage and barreling.
Right.
Rooms.
I think I can't remember, but I think we missed getting a tour.
We did. But the facility is like super. It looks super old school industrial, like ironworks. It's a lot of brick and steel.
It was super interesting to go from Woodford to Buffalo. I mean, Woodford is just, it's almost elegant,
right?
In a kind of rustic way.
Yeah.
And then to your point, Derek, you go to Buffalo, and it's not that it's rusty, crusty industrial. It's like really cool. It was just like opposite ends of the spectrum, but both really, really neat.
And both working really hard to produce really good bourbon.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
it is. It's a 90 proof.
Okay.
I think, when I take a sniff, I get some brown sugar, really sweet. And then when I taste, I feel some mint in there.
You feel what?
Some mint.
Really?
Actually, yeah, which is a little different than otherwise. But
I think you nailed the brown sugar on the nose. That's,
I smell Parmesan cheese.
Of course you do.
In episode one, I think I said this was my first experience of bourbon.
That's right.
Buffalo was my first.
That's right.
So still a fan.
Buffalo is probably one of my favorite bourbons for the main reason. My wife, we've never had a drink that we both like. She's always been like kind of a Chardonnay person, and I was like into beer and IPAs and whatnot, and would drink bourbon on the side. My wife loves Dr. Pepper. It's like her go-to, soft drink. And I was drinking Buffalo Trace one day, and I was like, you know what? She likes Dr. Pepper. I bet that spicy bourbon kind of thing she'd be into.
That's a really good call.
And so I just like, Sarah, try this. What do you think? And
that's a really good call.
And that was it. I mean, she is a Buffalo Trace fan if I've ever met one.
Yeah, she is.
Would you say, like on my third sip of this, it's feeling, I want to say thicker, but it's not. It's not thick, sticky like a liqueur or anything like that. And I don't know if that's just if that's just a mouthfeel.
Is it do you think it's the finish with a new sip layered on top of it?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Which I'll try the fourth.
Yeah, keep going. They don't release the mash. The mash bill is not released.
Wow, so another one. So we're like 0 for 3 tonight on mashes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's obviously with the following of Buffalo Trace, there's a lot of sites where you can get reviewers who are speculating.
Okay.
Pretty consistently, they're
I'm going to go. It's higher on the corn.
High on corn, and they're all
to
speculating consistently. I say not all. They're consistently speculating less than 10% rye.
Okay.
Which would drive up with the barley mix of that. Yeah. So maybe some of that finish. It's relative to the Russell. We talked about a long finish.
Right.
This kind of has a little bit short, kind of a medium finish.
Yeah.
It's definitely there.
It feels full though. Like it doesn't. I don't feel it thinning out. Like it's got a good warm. Like that's why I said it. Like my mouth feels like it's thicker.
Yeah.
But it's not it doesn't have a viscosity thickness to it. It just feels.
No, but it hangs. The taste hangs for me too.
Yeah, I like it.
I do too.
I think what's interesting is all the commonalities I'm hearing. So Russell's Reserve. They talked a lot about the limestone and how they filtrate the water and the importance of that in their process. And it sounds like that's coming out in a couple of these other ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a lot of it has to do with Kentucky, right? I mean, it's just kind of has that perfect balance of environmental things that you need in order to make a good bourbon.
Yeah.
And then I think also immigration. You've got people that were coming in from other countries and bringing recipes and different flavors, and then the migration out west. A lot of people stopped in Kentucky. They didn't go farther than Kentucky. That's where they got
the long walk.
Yep. Well, and that Buffalo Trace was kind of narrow.
There
so
you go.
many people
Yeah, exactly.
Go
once the Buffalo, the path ended, like stopped here.
Right. Yeah, tolls. It was a mess.
So when you talk about recipes coming over too, are you thinking that there are whiskey recipes that were distilled overseas came here and said we don't have the same ingredients, but
Let's work with what we got.
Let's work with what we got. And
and
here
the water as a foundation is different, right?
right, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Just like bagels and pizza. Like when you go to a different city, what you would think is a common recipe tastes very different because of the water.
That's why I buy my dough at Ferrucci's. They bring it in from Brooklyn.
Somehow we went from bourbon to bagels and pizza.
Oh, sorry. That's the other podcast I do.
Oh, okay.
Bourbon and bagels.
I wasn't invited to that one either.
True
Okay.
story.
I like it.
It's good.
Yeah.
It is good. I have
Well
to
done.
say, it is a very good bourbon. It is very
Yep.
good. It's got a really nice blend between. There's not really a sweetness to it. Do you think there's any sweetness in it?
I do.
Do you really?
When
Okay.
you said brown sugar,
Yeah.
I was like, "Yep, that's it. I nailed it." And then on the I don't taste the brown sugar, but I definitely taste a lot more of that warm, sweeter. Maybe it's a caramel. Maybe it's that, like you said, it's got some spice in it.
Yeah.
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 Well, at the very least, I think everybody ought to go out and try and find some because we certainly like it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was going to
that's
say,
for sure.
so here's
Yeah.
the public service announcement for the
Right.
week. If you've got somebody that likes bourbon and you're looking for a gift and you find Buffalo Trace,
Yeah.
I haven't found a person who turns it away.
Who didn't like it?
Who doesn't get excited about it.
From all of us Bourbon Boys, we want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Bourbon on.